So the video game worlds I'd love to see connected are Doom and Wolfenstein. Now you might say, Rich, they're already connected. And yes, you're right. Back in the early days of touchscreen phones, Wolfenstein RPG very overtly connected the worlds of Wolfenstein and Doom, since you fight basically the predecessor to the cyber demon that features in the original Doom games. And yes, the games are already connected, but I would like to see that be explored a bit more, because as far as I'm aware, that's really the only sort of explicit link between the games. The musings of Doomslayer being like a descendant of BJ Blazkowicz would be awesome, and I would love that to get explored in Doom 3, or maybe even in Doom Eternal: The Ancient Gods. It could happen. Wolfenstein 3 is still yet to come as well, and it would be super cool to have some kind of more overt nod to connect the two games, be it as the Doomslayer being a descendant of Blazkowicz, or maybe even the origin of the UAC. I don't know the backstory of the UAC that well from Doom. Maybe it could link back towards, the 80s, 90s, maybe, whenever Wolfenstein 3 is going to be set. Maybe they could tie it in a bit more, and I'd love to see those games, at least the modern versions, the new Wolfenstein games and the new Doom games, be interconnected, or at least have the events of Wolfenstein 3 somehow tie into the events of Doom 64, which is actually the game that preceded Doom 2016. I'd love to see Wolfenstein 3 tie into Doom 64 in some way and connect the games a bit more tangibly than through a really obscure mobile game.
So mine's a bit of a confusing one for me personally today, because I simultaneously really wanted this to happen, but also absolutely did not. And this is a crossover between the Uncharted series and The Last of Us. Obviously, they're both made by the same developer, Naughty Dog, but there was one brief moment at the end of Uncharted 4 when I thought they were genuinely going to commit to it. You've had Easter eggs to both franchises appear in the games, suggesting it's some kind of crossover, but they've only ever been Easter eggs. No one's really put any stock into them sharing the same universe. But in the epilogue of Uncharted 4, when you pick up as Nathan Drake's daughter, and Elena and Nate are both missing, there was a brief moment where I wondered, is this sense of foreboding doom going to lead up to the end of Uncharted, linking with the beginning of The Last of Us 1, with the outbreak, fully kicking off, and the cordyceps infected monsters taking over? Are they going to be sweeping down on the beach 28 days later style? Obviously that didn't happen, but for a brief moment, I think me and a few others at least that I've seen on the internet thought that might be happening, that this plot twist was going to go ahead. And don't get me wrong, I would have popped big for it in the moment. Like, this would have blown my mind. It would have been on every single list of mine until the end of days, but it didn't happen. And probably for the best, to be fair. Uncharted doesn't need to be linked to The Last of Us. Its endgame doesn't need to be linked to a completely different franchise. That said, I do think there's scope to do an almost what-if scenario, a what-if game or DLC or standalone, kind of expansion that explores a potential connection between both games. Have Nathan Drake in there and the rest of the cast. Have Sully, have Sam, have Elena. Have Nathan's daughter be a kind of parallel to Ellie and Joel, or Joel and Sarah, sorry. Do something ridiculous with it like that. And it doesn't have to be canon, because it probably would spoil it if it was canon, but, right, picture this. An expansion to Uncharted 4, like 5 years after it's come out, where you pick up at the end of the epilogue, you control Nathan Drake's daughter, and then it is this what-if scenario. In this alternate timeline, the infected do come swarming in, and then you just branch off from there for like 8 hours or something. Will he ever do it? No. Is it even a good idea? Maybe not. But like I said, I'd pop big, and that would be cool. So Naughty Dog, Sony, at this moment in time, Bethesda's just being bought by Microsoft. You've got to up your game. Give me this crossover. Give me the event. Do it.
So, the video game worlds that I think need to be connected, I think also represent the biggest missed opportunity of the kind of in gaming that I've seen this year, and that is Marvel's Avengers and Marvel's Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man to be specifically, not actually linking up. Now, I think this is just ridiculous. You had such a great universe that Insomniac had built up in their first game, and now I know obviously Crystal Dynamics totally should have done their own interpretation. I think that's totally fine. They need to be able to flex their creative muscles and do things that way. However, it just would have been so much better if you could have built those two games kind of to share and occupy that same aesthetic and space. And also, Captain America's character design is really ass, so that is also something else to bear in mind. But yeah, I think it would have made total sense to have those two games intersect. And it baffles me that they don't, and now we're going to have to live with two different interpretations of Spider-Man on the PS4 and PS5 and Xbox and whatever in the space of like a year. So it's just it's dumb. I mean, I again reiterating, I totally think Crystal Dynamics, well within their rights to basically plant their own stamp on that IP, but equally, if we got all those teasers in Marvel Spider-Man, about the Avengers, about Daredevil, about, all the different characters that are probably going to show up in Marvel's Avengers just in new Crystal Dynamics-y type ways, it is a little bit anticlimactic to then go from that to them they don't coexist at all, but whatever. It is what it is. I can live with two Marvel universes. I just think it's a bit of a dumb move not to have them interact in that way after all those teasers of a Marvel gaming universe or whatever, and obviously with the promise of more Marvel games to come. Guardians of the Galaxy title is heavily rumored. I forget who's working on that, but I think that's coming as well. So yeah, I would prefer it if they all interlinked, but if they don't, it's fine. It's just, I think it kind of was a bit of a no-brainer, so
There's only one thing that we all want, isn't there, to be honest, right now, in the aftermath of Microsoft just laying it down and buying Bethesda, buying ZeniMax, and acquiring all those IPs. The two worlds that need to be connected are Doom and Halo, because, like I said, immediately as soon as that announcement came out, as soon as that deal was made, so many people started making fan crossovers of Doom Guy fighting Master Chief, or standing alongside him. Although one of my favorites is the one that's doing the rounds where, you have Doom Guy looking at his portal from Doom Eternal, slip space rift detected or whatever. And on the other side, you mirror that with Master Chief looking towards this sort of blue light in the distance. Just imagine the two of them coming out of each other's portals or whatever it is, whatever gets them to stand next to each other, and give us the full-on Spartan showdown that was supposed to be in Halo 5 between Master Chief and Spartan Locke that we never got, and give Doom Guy someone that he can go up against, and sort of trade a few blows with. Even though the way that Doom Guy is written in Doom Eternal means that he could just sort of flick Master Chief over the horizon and nothing's literally going to stop him. He's literally written into the lore as the most, powerful individual ever. But it's also Master Chief, so he'd be going up against the sheer branding might of Xbox. And I just think, you also have broken Halo Infinite on the floor, just sort of on the floor, like struggling to sort of get by and matter a little bit, and it's not really going to stand on its own until next year. And what could that hand be coming out of the clouds to lift it back up? It's the Doom Guy. Just lift up Halo Infinite. We announce some, Doom DLC, Doom Eternal DLC is a nice crossover, and then just segue into it. Where's Master Chief been before Halo Infinite? He was hanging with Doom Guy. Just bring it together, because why not? You have all the IPs, you have all the money, you have all the fandom that would love to see it. I'm calling it right now if that doesn't happen. I mean, come on. Or rather, I'm calling it right now that it does happen, because we all want to see it.